The Super Bowl is in the books, so of course, rookie draft season is here. We do not do small guests here in the Sanctuary, so I'm joined by one of the biggest names in the industry, of course, the fantastic Heath Cummings. Heath, not quite the result you wanted in the Super Bowl, but how are you doing today?
It's my first public appearance since the shellacking, and I'm happy to be here. Always enjoy talking Dynasty with you. As I was saying before the show, I probably would have handled this much worse if it wasn't for the way the last 5 years went. We're okay.
Yeah, it's hard to feel sorry for you when you've won more Super Bowls than I've had playoff appearances in my entire life as a Jets fan. So, yeah.
But hey, at least they're not bringing
sympathy coming from this end.
It was a day of bad news for me. I think a day good news for you. They're not bringing Aaron Rodgers back. So that's there you go.
Absolutely delighted. Couldn't be happier. But yeah, I'd rather start nobody at quarterback than Aaron Rodgers again. But we're not here to talk about Aaron Rodgers. We are going to dive into a 1QB rookie mock because it's rookie season. Now, Heath, this is really, really early. We're middle of February. Mm-hmm. How far into your kind of rookie evaluation process are you at the moment?
I would say at the beginning. I consume a little bit of information in college football during the season, but for the most part, my process starts after fantasy football season is over. And I lean more into, I don't fancy myself a film expert. I consume a lot of other people's film reviews. I consume a lot of the publications and stuff like that. So it at the beginning, but not unprepared for this. I think I could maybe even squeeze out a 2-round mock if we made it Superflex and we made it tight end premium. Then I think I'd be okay on the top 24. 1 QB, 1 round is probably a good place to start.
No, exactly that. I figured we'd ease in gently. I'm pretty much the same. Obviously I don't watch college football over here. It just makes life a little bit more challenging trying to work out where it's on, when it's on. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I come afresh to most of these guys new each year. I'm pretty in depth with the quarterbacks. I think I've watched 7 so far. Running backs, wide receivers, kind of sort of 8 or 9, and then I've not even looked at tight ends yet. So I've got the rookie model. The numbers are locked and set. But yeah, from a film basis, it's very much early days. But yeah. Heath, as you are the guest, I'm going to allow you to have the first pick. So the 101. Is this nailed on really easy for you, or is there any kind of potential jeopardy at the moment?
I was really hopeful that as the guest I would get to do the 101 because I figure that's the one that nobody's going to argue with. It's Ashton Jeanty, and yes, it's very, very easy. This feels a lot like I remember when Bijan came out, and I just could not trade for him. It was like I'm offering 3 first-round picks and a player, and I can't get to that pick. And I think there's going to be a lot of people with the 101 this year, especially if we get, top 15 draft capital and goes to a team that we are excited about him playing for. Like he might be the number 2 or 3 running back in Dynasty as soon as May.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wild how good he looks, how explosive he looks, and I think that the numbers back it up. I've obviously got my rookie model. You talked about Bijan there. I mean, Bijan's a little bit of an outlier. He's the 100th percentile player in the model. Yeah. But Ashton Jeanty is about as close as you can get. He's 99.2 percentile, and that's based on being the 11th overall pick. So interestingly, if he went number 8 overall, the same as Bijan Robinson, he would have the exact same model score as Bijan Robinson. So that's how good a prospect we're potentially talking right now.
I am now cheering for him to go at exactly 8. That's fantastic.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to come in at the 102, and I'm probably going to throw a little bit of a hand grenade in the mix, shall we say? Because good. I'm really intrigued by this wide receiver class, but there's one player to me that is head and shoulders above all of the wide receivers in this mix. And I don't think many people have got him at the wide receiver 1 spot. And I think it's because they're not sure quite what to do with him. And that is Travis Hunter. Now, for me, I really think, I've said this in our Discord with our members, I really think he's going to be drafted as a wide receiver because I think he can make more money there. And I think that the whole kind of Travis Hunter experience is about him forcing teams to do what he wants to do, quite frankly. And I think that, the sensible, more logical thing is this is a corner that we can have some special plays with a wide receiver. Well, I don't see why he couldn't be an every down wide receiver who can come in on nickel downs or, third down packages as a cornerback and maybe try and expand that play as kind of his career goes on. I think he's a better wide receiver than he is a cornerback. And I think as a pure wide receiver, he's phenomenal. I think he's a great route runner. I think he's an elite separator. His contested catch ability is phenomenal. And I think if he was just a wide receiver, we'd be talking about him as one of these generational prospects, a true superstar. But just because there's a little bit of uncertainty, he's kind of falling down in ranks. And I'm willing to say, look, I think he's going to be a wide receiver. If I was drafting today and it was a real league, of course I'm not taking him here.
Right.
But I'm going based on the fact that I think he's going to be a wide receiver, so I'm taking him 102.
I think you're very much could be ahead of the curve if what your presumptions are turn out to be true. Like he could absolutely end up as the easy 102 if some team drafts him and says he's our wide receiver 1 and he'll play defense sometimes. Then I don't like, and even like I can make the argument he's not my number 1 wide receiver at this moment. I'll take Tetairoa McMillan next and make him the third pick as my number 1 wide receiver. But I think that the argument for taking Travis Hunter even over him is just like he's such a special football player, and he hasn't even played wide receiver that long, and he may just be the best player in the NFL in a couple of years. So yeah, I don't have any problem with that pick. I probably would have I kind of expected you to go to McMillan. That's what I would have done at 2. I think if you're looking for the safest wide receiver 1 in the class, it's him. Fantastic size, fantastic hands, can do just about anything that you want as an X as a wide receiver. And again, probably a top 20 pick in the NFL draft. Hopefully he goes to a situation that we like, but I expect him to be the 102 in most, unless we get another running back that goes higher than we expect. But in most rookie drafts, I think it'll be McMillan.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like McMillan. I don't want this to be a seen as me taking shade on McMillan. I do think my one concern is that I think given the frame, given the size, we could see sort of a Marvin Harrison-like rookie year where maybe he doesn't burst onto the scene if he's asked to go and be a traditional wide receiver. If we're going to get manufactured touches and, used in inventive ways, then I think he can. But if we're just going to stick him outside and say, you're our X receiver, go and run a full route tree, and we're not going to make life any easier, it might take him a little bit of time because I don't think he's that truly explosive elite separator. I think he's a good route runner, but I don't think he's a true separator. And I think that could take a little bit of time for him to get, elite level production. I don't think he's going to come in like Malik Neighbors did out the gate. That's my only slight knock on him, but I still think he's absolutely phenomenal. And I'm very excited to be drafting him. Right. Before we move on to the next one, though, if you are finding this for the first time, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're going to move on to the 104. Now, this feels like, for me, a distinct tier break. I feel like there's 3 potential elite talents, and I've now sort of got question marks over pretty much everyone else in the rest of this draft. So I'm going to come in here at the 104. I'm going to take Luther Burden. This is a guy that I was super excited to be drafting ever since he came out of high school as a 5-star recruit. I think that if we're talking ceiling outcomes, I think he's potentially got as high a ceiling as any other wide receiver, maybe even any other player in this draft outside of Hunter and Jeanty. I think he has got truly elite potential. It could be that he's a bit more boom bust for fantasy. Right. And I do wonder if he could drift in and out of games in the NFL, but I am very excited at chasing that kind of 100th percentile outcome of what he could be in the NFL.
Well, I think that like you talk about this being a tier break, it might be the second one already in the draft because I think there was a tier break after Ashton Jeanty as well. Yeah, but it also gets to the point, I think, where it's like, how much do we believe that this class is so much different than past classes because of this great strength of the running back class and the relative, at least to recent years, maybe weakness of the wide receiver class? Because we're used to taking at least 3 or 4 wide receivers amongst the first 4 skill position players. I definitely think that once we've gotten to this point and Burden is gone, I might take 3 or 4 running backs in a row if I had all of the picks. Now, I wouldn't obviously do that on a real team, but I do think this is where the running backs really start to stand out. But it's going to be so dependent when we get to draft day, which one of these guys goes in early round 2, which one of these guys goes to a good landing spot. I will go with TreyVeon Henderson here. I love the pass catching potential. I don't care really at all that he had to share the backfield too much. This could be the guy who leads all NFL running backs in catches in a couple of years. Very explosive player. And yeah, I feel very good about that. I don't feel like there was much of a tier between the last 2 picks or really the next 2 picks.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I kind of agree. I feel like there's a collection of running backs here where, depending on draft capital landing spot, you could probably argue one over the next 10 times out of 100 kind of thing. I'm really excited, again, talking about chasing ceiling, the upside and ceiling of Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
I think that receiving ability, anytime a guy is a high school wide receiver, I'm always going to be very intrigued when they're playing running back. I am, for me, how I approach Dynasty and how I'm looking at this, I would view it as there's a lot of running backs that I think are similar. So I'd almost be like, I'd rather trade back and not take one, or I don't want to be the person to take the second running back. I'd rather be the person to take the 4th or 5th. I appreciate this is a mock and we can't trade around and stuff. Would you be approaching it like that? Obviously, at the moment, appreciate we're a long way out from actual drafts, or are you excited about Henderson enough to be making that pick no matter what?
I would have to receive something of value to move down. Like I do have him, and again, this could all change in the next couple of months, but I do have him pretty clearly as the number 2 running back. And so I'm probably not like to move down 2 or 3 picks. I'm probably not taking a second to do that. I don't think, unless it's an early second. I'm not going to take a late second to do that. And I think it really depends, like how many of the next 3 or 4 running backs do I still really love when we get there. Right now, yeah, I'd say there's probably 4 that are in a pretty similar tier. He's at the top of it. But it would have to be something that moved me, not just I'm going to add a little bit of value here so that I can take a later running back.
Yeah, okay, makes perfect sense. Well, I'm going to continue the running back trend. I'm going to go with Omario Hampton. I think it just feels like I can guarantee that he's going to be a solid, reliable 2-down back that has the potential to be incredibly explosive. I've got a little bit concerned about some of his vision, some of his kind of agility, footwork, that kind of thing. But I think he can step in the NFL and immediately be a 2-down workhorse. I'd like to think that he could be a 3-down workhorse, but I think worst case scenario, he's like a 1A, 2. I'm trying to think of a good satellite back, and I'm struggling right now, but have a 1B complement. But I think there is potential that he could have the upside as well.
No, I think that I view Hampton very similar to the guy who I'm going to take next, a little bit bigger, obviously, in Kaleb Johnson, that I think is going to be a good 2-down back. I hope that he provides enough value on 3rd down to where he can become an actual difference maker in fantasy. But I think it's probably more fair at this point to look at it as you're probably getting an RB2. You're probably getting somebody that has multiple seasons with 250 plus rush attempts. I'm not sure how many 40 catch seasons he's going to have, but I don't think it'll be like Derrick Henry where he's catching 10 or 15 passes either.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm really struggling to make up my mind on Kaleb Johnson. I plug him into the model, and my model absolutely hates him. He's like he's 2 tiers below Hampton, Judkins, Henderson, those guys. Like he's a 67th percentile guy. They're all in the mid 80s. Like he's a significant drop down. I plug on the film, and I'm like, I can kind of see it, but it feels like it's a little bit too boom bust for me. And it's like his highlights are amazing, but I don't see the down consistency. And I'm like, yeah, if I kind of poke myself in the eye and squint, I can see the hope and the NFL running back in there. But for me, I think he's a slight drop below another running back that's still on the board, which is who I'm going to take here. So I'm going to go and grab Quinshon Judkins, the other back out of Ohio State. Are you a Judkins believer or not as such?
I would. He is not my next favorite back. That's who I will take next. I won't say who it is, but I'm not so much a doubter. I just think that there's probably 7 running backs or 8 running backs in this class who should be top 5 running backs in this class, if that makes sense. And I think when you talk, go ahead.
I think there's an argument that there's 6 or 7 guys that would have been the RB1 last year. Like,
yes,
that's how good this class is compared to last year.
Yeah, I think this is definitely the range where like draft capital and landing spot are really going to separate Kaleb Johnson, Judkins, and the guy who I would take, which would be Devin Neal. And there might be, because I'm still early in the process, a little bit of homerism leaking in on Devin Neal. I've just watched him make so many big plays over the last 4 years for Kansas University. And I love his big play ability. Again, another guy who I think it's fair to question the consistency, because there were some stretches there where he just did not look like an NFL running back, and we know that he is. So hopefully he can get better at the consistency, but I think Devin Neal could be a really, maybe not the 250 touch guy, but a real home run hitter.
Absolutely. And at this point in the season, you can just say, I'm chasing upside. I'm chasing upside.
Yes,
and
right.
You don't have to explain any more than that, right? Before we get on to the number 10 pick, let's quickly have a recap of the picks so far. So we had Ashton Jeanty, number 101, Travis Hunt at 102, Tetairoa McMillan 103, Luther Burden finished the wide receiver one at the 104. And then we've had 5 running backs in a row, TreyVeon Henderson, Omario Hampton, Kaleb Johnson with the 107, Quinshon Judkins 108, and Devin Neal 109. I am now up at the 110. Before I make that pick, Heath, we're kind of feels like we're getting at the point where in most years we'd be talking about maybe a quarterback, maybe a tight end sneaking in here, even if it is 1QB, no tight end premium. Are you thinking about that, or are you still hammering those more valuable positions at running back and wide receiver?
It is, I would say, dependent on maybe what I need between the wide receivers and the tight ends in this range. And I've had a hard time. There's 3 tight ends in that top tier that I've got a preference of order right now, but not real strong conviction about it. So it might depend on when my next pick was as far as how I'm handling those tight ends. In a 1 QB draft, I'm sure that somebody's going to get me excited enough about one of these quarterbacks that eventually I'll push them up to this range. But right now, I don't really anticipate taking a quarterback in this mock.
Yeah, it feels a little bit different slamming a quarterback when you know they're the 101 that a team's invested in. Right now, where we're sort of, in theory, maybe not quite so excited. But I'm going to go for another Ohio State player, Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah,
just feels really solid, reliable. Just I almost feel like as long as he's a wide receiver 2 for an NFL team, I think he could be like a wide receiver 3 for fantasy for the next 5-6 years. Like, I just know what I'm getting. He's going to be reliable. He's going to be a solid producer without any sort of huge risks or concerns, I'd say.
No, yeah, I think like that would have definitely been a wide receiver I would have taken, and I was kind of going back and forth. I'm glad you made my decision easier for me. I'm going to go with the tight end, and again, I think Harold Fannin. You put Tyler Warren, you put Loveland, any of those 3 at the top of the tier, I'm okay with it. For me right now, Harold Fannin's at the top of my tier. I mean, you want to talk about, I'm just aiming for upside. It reminds me a little bit of like 3 years ago in the arguments we had about Trey McBride. And like the pro Trey McBride argument often boiled down to, would you look at those stats? I don't care where he played. And that's kind of the way we are with Harold Fannin too. It's like, he had 1,500 yards receiving as a tight end in college, and if you want a guy who can go out and play like a wide receiver as a tight end, Harold Fannin can do that. So I'm pretty excited to get him at the end of round 1 as of right now.
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit hot takey that I had Harold Fannin as my tight end 1 at this point in the process. So I'm really excited to hear that you're there with me. And yeah, I can't get my head around the Tyler Warren love at all. Like, okay, it'll be interesting to see. He's a Penn State guy, so he's probably going to be a freak athlete. But outside of that, like, he's really old, and I don't think anyone's talking about this. Like, we seem to just, oh, he did nothing as a 18, 19, 20-year-old, and then all of a sudden he's so much older than everyone else on the field, he starts producing. We're going to take him in the top 15.
Don't you think? I really have, and I don't know if you've noticed this. Like, you spend as much time in this space as I do. Like, it almost seems like the COVID years and the additional eligibility just really kind of pushed everybody off of how important that young production was, because we had so many guys coming through the process that were 23, 24 years old, or that the age they were supposed to break out, their team played 6 games. And so I think there were just I hope that maybe starting next year, or maybe even this year, we can kind of move back in that direction, because it's a fantastic indicator. And a lot of people just left it by the wayside.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's difficult because some teams, Washington played like 4 games, didn't they? And then
Right.
other teams are playing a full slate of games. So how would you weigh that out? As a numbers guy, it's difficult to take into account. But it's just age-adjusted production is the thing I come back to time and time again. And Tyler Warren doesn't have it, quite frankly. And yeah, Harold Fannin, really, really young prospects, really great production. I'm excited about him. Just to paint a picture here. So I'm just pulled up my rookie model. Harold Fannin is a 95th percentile prospect right now, and that's based on him going in the middle of the second round. Tyler Warren, as a top 12 pick, is an 85th percentile prospect.
Yeah.
So, that's even being a round and a half different in the NFL draft, I've still got Fannin at least a tier ahead. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I've not got huge amounts into the depths of the tight end film yet, so I'm very excited to watch them and see where we go. But I'm going to round out this first round, this mock. I'm going to go Tre Harris. Just a guy that you can already pencil in and see the exact role he's going to play in the NFL. I think it's going to be a fantasy relevant role. I think he's going to be used a lot in and around the goal line. I'm just excited to set and forget almost as a, boom bust, touchdown reliant guy, but I think he's got a role, and that's going to be exciting for fantasy.
Yeah, I think this is the fun part of the mocks, when you just kind of you've got the excuse now to go get your guy. When you're choosing between some of those top 2 or 3 or 4 prospects, man, there's a real risk you might be missing out on something spectacular. At this point in the draft, you just kind of go get your guy, and I don't have any problem with that pick there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that finishes up. That finishes the round. Is there anyone left on the board, Heath, that you're intrigued by? Anyone that you wish you could have made a pick selection of?
I was I think my number 1 wide receiver would have been Matthew Golden, left at this point. So his big play ability. Again, at this point, we're just aiming for upside, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He would have been my next wide receiver to pick. I really like him. I think in terms of route running, natural separator, really excited about him. I think there's absolutely a world where he could sneak up into the Egbuka range, and if he gets that draft capital, if he lands in the right situation. So, yeah, very excited about that. But Heath, thank you ever so much for coming on. It's always amazing to have you on and chop it up. I really enjoy it. If anybody is watching this and doesn't know where to find you, remind everyone where they can find you and your work.
Yeah, Fantasy Football Today Dynasty is our podcast. We go on Tuesdays and Fridays on YouTube at 11:30, and it's anywhere you can find podcasts, or go over to cbssports.com fantasy and look for the articles from Heath Cummings. We've got new Dynasty or new 2025 projections coming out this week, and new February Dynasty rankings coming out next week.
Exciting times. Well, make sure you go and check out Heath's work. We're going to be back very soon with the Superflex mock dropping in the next couple of days. So make sure you come back and check that up. And whilst you're there, hit that subscribe button. You will not regret it. Awesome.